Hello, DEO members. Thank you for joining our webinar. We are Influx, and today we're going to talk about how to design a marketing plan that meets your dental practice's needs in 2025. Uh, Marketing is a subject that I'm sure all of you have no shortage of experience with. You've probably worked with different teams, tried different tactics, and the reality is that it's a field that's ever changing, no more so than now here in 2025. So we want to kind of talk about some fundamentals and some relevant current takeaways that are important for you to be thinking with if you're running a dental organization of any size in 2025. Before we get started, we'll just take a few quick minutes to tell you a little bit about ourselves. My name is Max Bayback. I'm one of the co-founders of Influx Marketing. I have almost 20 years of experience in marketing and PR, working with companies of all shapes and sizes. And I've spent about the last 13 of those working specifically with healthcare practices with a focus on fee-for-service healthcare. And I'm joined today by our president here at Influx, Erica Crawford. Erica, I'll give you a second here to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name's Erica, as Max just said, but I have about 15 years of experience in PR first, and then I moved to digital marketing about a decade ago, and I am focused on cash pay healthcare practices.
Beautiful. A little bit more about Influx. For anyone who's interested, we're going to put up a link in a moment here where you can get all of these slides. I'm not going to read everything here, but Influx, our goal is to be your strategic marketing partner, rather than sort of taking a one-size-fits-all approach, really understanding your business and collaborating with you to reach those goals. And we're going to talk a lot about not so much about ourselves, but the philosophies behind how we do things that you can adopt, whether you're working with us or not, and you can take from it what works for you. We've been in this space about 14 years. We actually started in the very beginning with cash pay dental, specifically cosmetic dentistry, one of the most competitive markets in the country, and have expanded into other medical verticals. But we have a focus on again, as I mentioned, all cash pay healthcare. And we've built a proven system over those years, and we're going to talk to you about that a little bit. One of the things that we try to embody, and is just sort of an underlying philosophy for us is we can say we're a marketing company, but what is the end goal of everything that we do? We need to have the end result in mind. So everything that we do, and we sort of have a basket of services that might look really similar to what you see in a lot of other marketing agencies. But we work to tailor those for each of our clients that we work with to all result in patient acquisition. So rather than just sort of we're doing marketing, at the end of the day, we consider ourselves a patient acquisition agency. A little bit of Influx by the numbers. This is last year. I think we might need to update some of these numbers, but last year we had 14 million plus visitors to our client sites. We brought in over 350,000 new leads for our clients. A couple other fun numbers there. You can look those over. Here's an example of a testimonial from one of our clients. I won't go through all of this now. It's kind of a long one, but it's a good one. And if you choose to get these slides afterward, you can look that over. And here's some other examples of results that we've gotten for our dental clients. But today, we're going to talk about how we've achieved those results. And what I want to do is start off by kind of speaking more about strategy. I think this is something that's overlooked too often in dental marketing. And then we'll kind of bring it to the tactical takeaways. But I'm going to spend some time talking about things that I think are evergreen, important things to understand that apply regardless of the current marketing technology landscape. So today we have AI kind of threatening to change everything. And I think it's more important than ever to go back to basics in times like these. As DEO members, I know you spend a ton of time optimizing and analyzing your practice and thinking about strategy within your practice. And what I hope to give you today is kind of a masterclass in strategy for your marketing. So you can give that same level of thought to your marketing as you give to optimizing all other points of your practice. And again, I mentioned earlier, if you want to get these slides, you can scan this QR code here and we'll send them your way. Or just go to influxmarketing.com/DEO. Okay, so the problem with dental marketing today, in our estimation, and I'm not saying that there aren't great dental marketing companies out there. There are great ones, and there are mediocre ones, and there are ones that are worse than that. You run the gamut. But I think broadly speaking, what we tend to notice is that there is a cookie cutter approach. It's worked a certain way for a certain amount of time, and many of the agencies kind of have fallen into a rut of just offering a similar cookie cutter template to all of their clients, which is not the right move. Yes, again, there are only so many services that an agency is going to offer you. They're not going to change up all of their strategies for every single client, but I think that there is an importance to tweaking each of these things for each client. And what we see, and what I think is fundamentally flawed, is that it's gotten competitive on price. And what that means is a lot of these agencies are coming price first. They're approaching it with a price first and tactics later, meaning they're going to charge you what a practice will pay, can, or is willing to pay, and then figure out what they can deliver. But spoiler alert, it's not a lot today. When they're trying to be competitive on price, what they end up doing is giving you not much for your money, and you're left wondering, why does it feel like my marketing company isn't really getting me anywhere? Because they're leading with price first. And now this can work for GPs or insurance focused practices that maybe are getting a certain amount of patients, a certain amount of referrals, or people are just kind of finding them organically on the internet with a basic presence. But it really doesn't work when you're in a more competitive situation. You're trying to grow a fee for service practice or make the switch to fee for service. And it really doesn't scale outside of, so you go to your agency and you say, okay, good, I want to now scale this up. And the only real answer is, okay, good, we got to increase your ad spend. And that's true. That can be very true that you do need to increase your ad spend sometimes if you want to scale. But if you want to find ways to scale outside of increasing your ad spend, you need to step back and look at the basic strategy. Okay, so let's talk marketing strategy 101. There's a bit of a chicken and egg that we see often when it comes to strategizing your marketing. Often we see practices saying things like, hey, we want to do ads. Which service should we advertise? Or why aren't we advertising every service we offer? Or we need more patients. What should we do? But I think fundamentally we're asking the wrong questions if we're asking questions like this, because what we want to do is instead is work backwards from a business plan and have clearly defined marketing goals, and then determine what we should be advertising, where we should be advertising, or where we should be doing marketing, where we should be trying to acquire patients. It's kind of like you would obviously want to have a solid business plan before you open a location. And that business plan is going to help you determine where you should open your practice, geographically speaking. And really deciding how and where you want to market your practice is no different. You want to have that plan and those goals in advance. Once you have your business plan and your marketing goals clearly defined, it's going to dictate whether you can lean just solely on organic strategies, meaning not paid advertising strategies, or whether you do need to do paid advertising strategies. It can tell you what other marketing strategies and channels and tactics you should focus on. By the way, when I talk about a marketing channel, I mean anything from SEO is a marketing channel. Advertising, broadly speaking, is a marketing channel, but one particular advertising channel like Meta or Google, that would be a marketing channel. So I just mean any conduit to which you can reach patients through, broadly speaking. Once you know those goals, it's going to tell you how much you should be investing in your marketing. It's going to tell you whether your current team is focused on the right things, your current marketing team, and it's going to tell you what you can outsource, what you need to do in house, or if you need to outsource at all. So your marketing plan doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be costly. It can be simple or it can be intricate. It really depends on what your marketing goals are. And you need to define those first before you ask the questions that we saw on this previous slide. You know, when a client comes to us and is asking us these questions before defining those, that's what we have to take a step back and look at. You know, because a lot of times people think, well, marketing is marketing, right? But that really couldn't be further from the truth, because I'll just give you a couple examples. You know, a high-end fashion brand would never try to sell on Amazon, right? Or a mobile app probably wouldn't rely on direct mail to get downloads. A local grocery store probably isn't going to get much out of doing Google ads, or not profitably anyway. These are examples of a marketing channel based on a company's model. And those might be kind of drastic examples, but the same thinking needs to extend into all your marketing. What are you trying to accomplish? And then we'll work backwards from there. And I think a lot of this type of thinking is missing from dental marketing today, which is why so many dentists find themselves frustrated with their marketers while their marketers are telling them, hey, but we got you leads. Because the marketer is walking in and saying, yeah, I already know the model, it's dentistry. And so they're just kind of applying a template to that. But it isn't just about getting dental leads. It's about getting the leads that you need to power your business plan.
You know, Max, that's so true. You know, you showed this earlier kind of briefly, but there was a testimonial from one of our clients, Dr. Soul, right? He had been with Influx for years. We were getting him a lot of great leads, high ROI, et cetera. But another company kind of enticed him away and promised him more leads. So he left. He left Influx for about a year, went with this other company who honestly, I think actually did get them more leads than us. But they were low quality. They weren't the leads he was looking for. And his revenue and his return on marketing investment dropped. So then he ended up coming back to us. So the problem wasn't lead volume. It was the right type of patient and getting in the right type of patient and what you do around that. And that's something that not all marketing companies, and frankly, not all dental practices really define for themselves. Not just how many leads, but what leads are they?
Yeah, exactly. It's such a good example, Erica, because I think a lot of times when we talk about, I will talk to clients and say, we want to define your goals. And some might understand that. Some might be, a little bit lost in terms of they think, well, my goal is to get more patients, to get more leads, to increase revenue, to increase profit. Yes, blanketly, that's true. But there's a lot more nuance really that can, and in that case, it sounds like they were told they could get more leads. Maybe they did get more leads, but they didn't reach their goals. So ultimately, it's impossible to plan anything without a clearly spelled out goal. And the reason why the kind of more cookie cutter tactics that I was talking about don't work is because they aren't really built to your goals. And I'll give you just some examples. You can look over this list in more detail later, but a goal might include things like a marketing goal could be increasing volume of a certain type of case. That would be a more specific goal. How about shifting 100% to fee for service? That can be a bit of a process, and that takes some strategy to really get there. Getting more of the types of patients you want or more high value cases. Increasing revenue per patient, getting your associates busier, lifting revenue at a specific location. When we talk to a client, we want to know, okay, things are going well here, but we really have a goal here of adjusting to make sure that we're getting lift here. So it can go on and on, including there are goals like increasing your PR and your public brand perception, things that you can do on social media that don't tie directly, or at least there's not a straight line to revenue. But ultimately, if it fits into your strategy, it should help you to get where you're trying to go. And that ultimately will mean more revenue. But there can be a lot of ways to look at your marketing goals. So you want to take some time to really think about, what am I trying to accomplish? But let me give you some other tips and things to think with as you go about that process. So your business plan plus your marketing plan really, in my mind, equals your growth strategy. Your business plan and your marketing plan have to fit together to create an overall strategic plan. And that's what ultimately drives in more patients, increases revenue, increases profits, is having a really connected business strategy and marketing, a business plan and marketing plan. And when your marketing plan is like really just divorced from the fundamentals of your business plan, in my opinion, it's really doomed from the start. It's at least doomed to mediocrity, or maybe the fortune of your market. If you're in a place where there's a little bit more, where there's not enough supply of good clinicians to patients, then you might be okay without a strong business plan. But as soon as you hit a little challenge, a little headwind in a competitive market, this is where it really becomes important to make sure that you have a clearly thought out business plan that is connected to your marketing plan. And when you really have no growth strategy, you have no growth. And this is where we see a large majority of dental practices missing the mark. And the result of that is frustration about your marketing, feeling like your marketing should be setting you apart, but it really isn't. You're wondering if your agency is just collecting a check for getting you new patients that maybe you would have gotten anyway. You're not sure. You're feeling like there's got to be something else you can do. You're switching from agency to agency, trying new internal marketing coordinators, and you're kind of stuck in the same place. And most of the growth that you're getting is, or at least from what you can measure, is kind of from referral, from insurance, and from your own internal efficiencies. Let's talk now about another challenge that you as dentists face today when you go out there to market your practice in today's marketplace, and that is the commoditization of dentistry. I want to walk through something that I didn't, this isn't something that I developed, but I found that it was a really compelling framework to think about the way that industries mature and the challenge that you have as a business owner or a marketer. And this is dentistry or otherwise. These are just the phases or stages of commoditization. So first you have a functionality. A company introduces a new technique or tool, a process to solve a problem. For example, Uber challenged the taxi industry with a new platform and a new way of hailing cars. So totally new functionality. Then you have reliability. Once there are two or more credible options, so Uber started a long time ago and then Lyft came alongside, then it becomes about which one is more. If there are two credible options, it's really just which one is most reliable. So reliability is the second stage of the commoditization cycle. Then the next stage is convenience. Once there's a few options in the marketplace, customers are just looking at which is most convenient, which has the better service, which one's easier to work with. And the last stop in the commoditization cycle is just price. When there's multiple vendors offering comparable products that are functional, reliable, and all convenient, customers just look for the price. But selling on price is the last stop. And there are a lot of ways that you can differentiate yourself within the prior phases of this commoditization cycle. Now, if you don't want to compete on price solely, you cannot be a commodity. But decommoditizing yourself starts with some kind of thesis or observation about where there's a gap in your geographical market that you can fill or serve better than your competitors, or a concept that you can own. And I'm going to go into this more. Now, this is very much business 101. It's supply and demand. But I truly believe that in healthcare and in dentistry, it is overlooked. And we might even sometimes treat ourselves as a commodity instead of realizing that we have unique aspects and attributes that we can market to gain a competitive advantage. You're looking for a place where there's more demand, in this case, of course, patients, than supply, which would be, of course, dentists or clinicians. And we can find these places, we can find those places where there is more supply, more demand than supply, a lot easier if we zoom in. Like, I'll give you an example here. You can have an auto body shop in Phoenix, Arizona, or you can have a Tesla focused collision shop, a Tesla focused collision repair shop in Scottsdale, Arizona. You can have a bakery in New York, or you can have a custom cake shop for birthdays and events on the Upper East Side. Or you can have a dentist in Los Angeles, or you could have a cosmetic dental practice focus on private luxury experiences for high profile individuals in Beverly Hills. That's kind of a classic example of where, and it certainly is not going to apply to all practices, but it sort of shows you, all of those examples show you that you can zoom in and create something that becomes much more marketable. And you can zoom in through the lens of just service and focusing on a particular service, or as you can see in these examples here, zooming in geographically to focus on a particular geography. And both of those ways are ways to help you zoom in and find a gap that you can fill. What you're looking for, and it might not always apply, but I think this is just important to think about, and you can find out how it applies to you. This is painting with a broad brush here, but you're looking for a concept that you can own in your market. You don't have to overthink it. There's a lot of ways to niche down or to own a concept. And by the way, I don't want you, normally when I get to this point in kind of consulting clients, I can see them squirming in their chair because they're thinking, but there's so many more things that I do. I don't want to give all those up to just kind of double down on one service. You don't have to worry about boxing yourself out, and I'm going to get to that soon. But first, let's just continue to talk about how we find a concept that you can own in your market. Some examples just off the top, and you can read this whole list here in your own time. Yes, you can be insurance-based. You can be the low price leader if you want to compete on price. Some people do that and they do it well. You can be the emergency same-day dentist. You can be the luxury dentist. You can be the cosmetic, the holistic, the restorative. There's many other ways to specialize in the clinical sense or in the consumer sense, just specializing in a particular procedure. You can focus on a particular demographic. You can have a theme, which we see a lot, of course, in pediatrics or sleep dentistry. I'm sure you can think of many examples that I'm not mentioning here. But what you're doing when you own a concept in your market is you're trying to become, at best, you want to become a one of one. You know, the last item on the list there, I say a personal thought leader brand. We've helped a lot of dentists to cement themselves, to create their own personal brand and become a thought leader. And that is one great way to own a concept. Your concept is you. You become a one of one. But you either want to become a one of one, or you want to become one of something for which there's a surplus of demand. So you want to become known for a service, and maybe there's a few other people who are known for that service, but there's more patients than there is supply in terms of dentists. And by doing this, you really are narrowing down your market, and that can be the real magic of owning a concept in your market.
Yeah, speaking of that, Max, I'm just going to give a really good example, which is a dentist I use. So I'm here in LA, right? And there are plenty of dental options, honestly, all with really great reviews that are near my house, right? But in the end, I've been going to the same dentist for a really, really long time, and I love the practice quite a lot. But I want to tell you what their niche is, because it's not exactly what you would think of as a dental niche, right? So they do everything. And I mean, they have every dental specialty there, right? Mm-hmm. They do cosmetic, they do endo, they do periodontal, they have everything in the practice. So how do they set themselves apart? Right. And I love their brand because, at least for me, it works, right? Which is, their brand is all about the service that they have. They talk about how they have every dental specialty there, so that you're never going to have to be referred out to another dental practice, that you can get everything done there. They talk about how quick it is, right? You're never in the waiting room long. All the forms and everything, just through an iPad. It's really easy. Even the parking, it's just right there, always plenty of it. It's their own parking lot. You can get in and out of this place incredibly quickly. And the building itself and the build out and the rooms are definitely on the higher end or more luxury vibe. I wouldn't call it the highest end, but definitely the upper mid tier in terms of the building and the interior itself. And that is their offering. That is their concept in the market. It's we will get you in and out very quickly. We have a beautiful spot, and we can take care of any dental problem that you may have. And we will take care of it right here for you. And that is its concept. That is its brand. So it doesn't niche itself out of any particular procedure, but it still has a brand, and it's a pretty busy and successful practice.
It's a great example, and I'm going to talk about in some of these upcoming slides why that's so powerful. On the surface, something like that seems really simple, but it actually takes a huge concerted effort to get your entire team and to get kind of all of your touch points aligned around a single concept like that. So I love that example. And here, I kind of get into this here where, if you're trying to be everything to everyone, I talked about being a one-on-one. The opposite is being everything to everyone, which to me means you end up being nothing to anyone. You're trying to be all things, and that's really not a plan. And the other thing is, a lot of people will say to me, okay, but I'm the best clinician in my city. And unfortunately, that's not really a business strategy. It's definitely a brand value. And similar to how, Erica, you just talked about this brand value of like, we're here for convenience, for ease, for service. Mm-hmm. Talking about the quality of the care is obviously hugely important in all of your marketing, sure. But everyone's going to be saying that. On the other hand, by the way, we gave a lot of examples. A really simple example, which I'm sure many of you thought about before you open your practice, is simply a statement like, there aren't enough good general or family practices per capita in this town. That's a great starting thesis. Nothing wrong with that thesis. That's a business plan. I'm just saying once you start to get into competition, you have to think about it a little bit differently. But if you have a market like that, fantastic. You have a great business plan, and you probably, building on that, can build a relatively simple marketing program that works really well. So it can be simple, but it just has to be based on true fundamentals of supply and demand. And what I mean by that is it has to position you as a trusted solution to a problem in your market that not enough people are solving. That's what I mean by supply and demand.
And even out of that, Max, just one aspect, I would say that like most of the people that go to the practice that I get my work done at are all working professionals, meaning they're people who have an hour here or there out of work to go by, get their work, and go back to work. And I would say that's like, it feels the problem that you said. The problem is we don't have a place that we could run away from work for 1 hour, go to and come back to, and actually like get our work done in that amount of time. And this handled that problem for us,
Yeah, I'm jumping off script here a little bit because I think I have slides that talk about this elsewhere. But on the earlier slide, Erica, we talked about one of them is you could focus on a particular demographic. And I mentioned in parentheses there, it says young professionals. And we've seen, I'm sure everyone here in the audience has seen a number of practices in urban areas that have built around that kind of young professional. Ultimately, once you figure out your concept, there's going to be a demographic attached to it. It could be broad, it could be narrow. But why is it important to figure all this out before you start marketing? Because now you know who you're talking to. I'm talking to young professionals. And guess what? Young professionals spend more time on certain social media platforms or use certain devices and platforms for their searching versus other demographics. So that's all of this really leads you into a marketing strategy that is very focused, where every dollar is going to reaching who you need to reach on the platforms that they spend their time on. And this is why it's so important to think about those goals and those concepts that you want to own and having that business strategy and that growth plan before you even think about how you're going to spend a marketing dollar. A little bit more too here, Erica, on I talked about finding a concept that you can own. And this is also kind of like your reason for existing. These are lofty examples that maybe don't seem like they compare, but they really do. If they're helpful thought exercises to think about. Airbnb didn't just build another hotel chain. Tesla didn't just come into the market with, hey, we're also building more cars, that are the same. Uber didn't just create another taxi company. I love using those examples, and they're the classic ones. Amazon built a whole new shopping experience. More recently, you have examples like OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT. They didn't just create yet another search engine and try to get people to come over and use that. But imagine the marketing predicament of saying, hey, we have another way of doing the same thing you can do on Google. They reinvented it. Or a recent great marketing case study that you see a lot out there, at least as a marketer, Olipop. They didn't just create another soda, they rethought sodas entirely. So the question you need to ask yourself is, why do I exist? Like, what is the gap in my market that I'm filling? How am I different or better than the existing options? Even if it's only for a certain subset of patients. Here's another way to think about it. I call this just across the street. So imagine two practices that are directly across the street from each other and a patient standing in between. With no clear differentiator, it's just going to be a coin toss, right? But what if one of them is the leading expert in the very procedure that patient needs? They specialize in serving the patient group that patient fits into directly, like you were saying, Erica, a minute ago. This is how you're going to win the exact patients that you want every time. And what this is in the end is this is your unique selling proposition, or you might have heard this term USP, or your unique value proposition. It's why patients should care about you. Without a USP, you're just saying, hey, we also do the exact same thing that everybody around here does, which really handicaps any marketing efforts that you're going to be undertaking, any dollars that you're spending. It's no wonder that you're blending in and kind of just competing for the same patients. Now, this doesn't mean you can't do other things. And I'm going to get to that at the very end. I have a slide about how do you make sure that you can stay diverse as well. This is just simply the thing that you're going to lead with in the majority of your marketing. You know, it could be something silly. Like Erica, you brought up the example of excellent service. It could be something silly like, you know, what was the example I wrote here? We're the nicest dentist in Tampa Bay. Obviously, that's not fantastic, but it's something. It'd be a lot better if it was something like we're the number one implant provider in the greater St. Louis area. One of those is definitely better than the other. One is quantifiable. One is kind of subjective and less trustable. But any sort of USP is better than simply saying, we are dentists. And you can build a much stronger marketing program around any kind of unique selling proposition because this is your advantage. Your USP is your advantage.
And just to add to that, it obviously depends on your market, but when you're in really competitive markets, like I said, I'm here in Los Angeles, there are a lot of people who have good work in a really competitive city. So it really comes down to your brand, figuring out USP, setting yourself apart. I guess I'm going to just keep using personal examples, but I'm going to add another one here, right? Which is when I had to find a pediatric dentist for my daughter. I looked around me and I'm not kidding. There were just dozens and dozens of practices with hundreds of 5-star reviews, like clearly all amazing work, right? So in the end of the day, I'm like, okay, but I'm bringing a toddler to a dentist. Like, what is that experience like? What is the best experience I'm going to possibly have for her?
Just the first time you're ever bringing her to a dentist?
It was the first time I was ever bringing her for a dentist. And I was like, I can't imagine what that's going to be like, So I found what I particularly where I live in LA. I don't know why. I don't know if I'm like in the hub of pediatric dentists. I don't know, but there were just so many options that were clearly all great dentists. But at the end of the day, there was just this one practice and the building was so cute and they gave every kid toys and they took little Polaroid shots, of every kid and you take it home with you. And the whole thing was just like so creative in terms of the experience for the child, more so than some of the others, which I'm sure were really nice or friendly. And I'm sure they had little stickers, but this place just went clearly like above and beyond. And they were quick too, because when you're inside a child's mouth, you don't have a lot of time, right? And that's what I mean by quick, right? On the cleanings and things like that. And they were just so excellent and so quick that I just saw why them. And they're busy, once again, very, very successful practice. And I could just see why and how they set themselves apart because they're the ones who are quick and go the extra mile. So it made your kid, and it definitely made my kid, feel like it was like going to a toy store or some fun activity. Like it wasn't traumatic in the slightest. And I definitely felt like that was their USP.
Absolutely. So I'm sure we have many of you here watching in the audience who've spent a lot of time to create those kind of differentiators in your practice. The question is, how can you kind of package those up into your communication so that it comes through in your marketing? Because clearly something in the marketing when you did your searching, Erica, showed you that they had those qualities, those attributes, and then you made a decision. But there's a lot of different ways you can approach it. Pediatrics does tend to be a fairly easy example because I think there's a lot of marketing strategy around making it a great experience for kids. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of branding actually. So this actually leads us perfectly into the next section because there's a lot of branding in pediatrics actually, and we see less of it in other sectors of dental. Yep. At the end of the day, this unique selling proposition you have, one easy way to think about it is it should become your brand. With that USP in hand, you can actually build the brand. It's something that I think, as I just mentioned, a lot of dental practices fail to do. But now you know the narrative and the messaging that your brand needs to support kind of at every touch point. That would be things like your website copy, your website design and visuals, your social media content, testimonials. Make sure you gather testimonials that reinforce that unique selling proposition. And every bit of social proof. So that would be like, any kind of PR, awards, recognitions. It should all support that same idea. And another question, people say, do you really need a brand in dentistry? Well, let me be clear that when I say a brand, that doesn't mean a fancy logo. It just means having a consistent identity that's built around that concept that you want to own or that business strategy. A lot of times, an insurance-based practice, building a brand to support them means building a website that does not look too fancy. We have had times when we've had to take websites that we made that looked too fancy. Just being clearly candid, when we first started out, we did a lot of cosmetic dentistry. We tried to build those same type of beautiful websites that converted extremely well for high case value high value cases in competitive markets, and they didn't work as well for the practices that were 100% insurance. So building a brand just means building the right brand. It doesn't mean spending a bunch of money. It doesn't mean being fancy or luxury or a fancy logo. And it's really got nothing to do with that, in my opinion. It's just building something that's consistently reflective of the identity that you need to be to support your business plan. There's two takeaways that I want to give you when I think about whether or not you should have a brand in dentistry. Keeping in mind what I just said about what a brand is. It's not something fancy necessarily. It's whatever it needs to be. But if you have a well-aligned brand that is aligned to your business strategy and aligned to your marketing, it will drop your patient acquisition cost, or it'll help you to get higher value patients. And that's ultimately the same thing. You're getting a better margin. That's the difference between the two practices across the street. The patient standing right there, they look the same. All you're doing is spending more money to get there first. And that's the second takeaway here. It says a brand makes the difference between, when you have a brand, it makes the difference between this kind of first to get there marketing strategy, first to capture their attention, first to kind of spend enough to be in front of them as soon as they search on Google. Fine, that works, but up to a point. What happens when you have to do tiebreaker marketing in competitive markets like Erica was talking about, like the just across the street example? What happens then? The brand is the tiebreaker. And what it also does is it optimizes every touch point. So you have all these things that you need to, again, you as DEO members are spending so much time, I know, because I've been to now a number of the meetings and I've come across how hard each of you work to optimize your practice. You already have so many things that you need to optimize and get into alignment. And then when you add in all of the factors of your marketing, it can be overwhelming. Well, what happens when you really have a concept that you can focus on is that all these touch points become totally aligned. Your messaging, your website, your social, your search strategy, your content, even all the way down to your hiring, your front desk scripts, the training. All of these things become extremely aligned. Now, with that in hand, you're finally ready. With all of the things we just discussed, you're now finally ready to make a marketing plan. And I talked earlier about the chicken and the egg. And again, your business plan and your marketing goals will dictate everything you need to know, whether you can lean on organic strategies, whether you need to pay for advertising, which channels you should be spending your time on or spending your budget on, etc. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to be built to achieve your goals. Yes, Erica.
Yeah, I was just going to add something to that, and I love how you could have put the whole aspect of branding comes first. One thing that a lot of people don't understand about marketing or marketing agencies is the entire goal of a marketing agencies is to get eyes on you, right? And that's eyes on your website, eyes on your practice, like no matter what channel that you go into, which is what you're about to get into next. The ultimate goal of a marketing company is to get as many eyes on you and interested in you as possible. But there's that part of when they've seen you, when they've seen your website, when they've seen your practice, when they've seen your reviews, do they decide to go with you, right? An average person looks to 3 to 5 businesses, practices. It's not even just in dental marketing, but like in general, they look at 3 to 5 restaurants, it doesn't matter what, before they're choosing to execute or to purchase something, right? In terms of like some sort of service. And when you're in that final 3 to 5, the decision of them coming to you ultimately comes down to your brand, not even necessarily the marketing. So that's why it's so important to have it first, because if that's not all settled and then you're spending all this money trying to get eyes on you, but it doesn't convert, that's really where the profit margins start to become a problem.
Exactly right. And the reason that I give this kind of talk, this exact talk we put together specifically for the DO, but I talk on these types of points a lot. And the reason I give it is because a lot of people ask me, what can I do to outperform? And the reality is, at a certain point, as long as you have an agency that knows their basics and have good work ethic, you're going to do pretty good. But to get past that, you need to think about these things. It also, not only will it help a potential patient who arrives at your site to make a decision, it also helps your marketing agency to really hone in, as long as they're built to be able to kind of take this feedback from you and steer the ship accordingly, to really hone in on a strategy that makes sense for you. Again, you're focusing your budget rather than saying, if you had endless budget, you could just market to everyone and anyone, but nobody does. So you have to take and decide, okay, I want to spend my dollars focused on the people that fit into this concept that I own, this brand that I'm building. So it is a great way to create a tiebreaker for the patient who hits your site, and it's a great way to give your marketing company tremendous focus where they will get outsized returns. And it's why I talk about this, because at a certain point, there's nothing else you're going to do if you cannot get these fundamentals in-house, kind of all your ducks in a row as it relates to the marketing strategy and how it connects to your business strategy. So this is a bit of a wall of text here. You all can take these slides and read this over more closely, but the reality is you're now going to pick these channels based on what you've decided are the goals, who you're going after, what is your marketing plan, what is your brand. And as I said earlier, there's only so many channels, yes, that a marketing agency is going to be able to offer. You're going to see a lot of the same offerings across dental marketing companies. However, how you mix those, how much you spend on each, how you approach each, really should change based on your underlying plan. So actually, Erica, this is the point at which I'm going to kind of turn over to you. We want to give you some frameworks for how you should think about, again, the plan should really be adjusted to you. But broadly speaking, there's kind of this is the foundation you need to have. If you want to go up to the next level, you should be thinking about this mix of services and tactics, these marketing channels. And then maybe if you really are in a competitive market, in a competitive specialty, and you want to outperform, what you should be thinking about there. No matter what, everything I said here is true. But at the same time, it doesn't negate the fact that you need to be working with an agency that does know their basics well, that understands where you can most efficiently and most cost effectively acquire patients today, and helps you to get all those basic foundational things in place for your marketing. So Erica, I'll turn that over to you and let you take it from here.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, you've now figured out your unique selling proposition. You've figured out your brand. You know exactly where you fit in the market. So now you have to look at the marketing channels. And one thing I always talk about before getting into all the various marketing channels, I say this and I include this in sort of every talk or webinar that I give, which is that you should have at least 10 ways to acquire patients. It really is the bare minimum of different acquisition channels. So for example, it might be from a TV ad. It might be from a referral program. It might be from your SEO. It might be from Google ads, Meta ads. You can count them, but there should be at least 10 different opportunities and ways that you could get in a new patient to your practice. So that's something to think with. Here are some of the basic things that are really helpful in getting new dental patients. Obviously, you have a website that is your, that's your hub. That is where people see you. That's your online presence. So having a really nice website that, more importantly, communicates your brand. Max sort of mentioned this earlier. It doesn't even have to be the most aesthetic website if what you're doing is general dentistry. But if you're doing cosmetic dentistry, it does need to be a bit more elevated. Or if it's pediatric dentistry, it needs to be a little bit more fun and colorful. Whatever that website is, it needs to really reflect your brand. And it needs to be, informative. It needs to be built well so that it can be SEO'd later on. There are aspects of it from a technical perspective as well, right? Your Google business profile, I'm going to get in this a little bit later, incredibly important. You have local listings like Yext and different directories that you can use and have your information on. Having a really good CRM so that you're doing lead follow-up is important. You definitely need a lot of some sort of review management tool. These are like the musts, like the very basic things that your dental marketing company needs to know how to do in order for you to have a successful practice. The only thing is LSAs. It depends a little bit on the practice and what your goals are, but all of this is the basic things you need to have in order to grow your practice.
Now, and just for people who don't know, LSA would be a local service ad. I think Erica's going to get into those a little bit more shortly.
Exactly. Now, if you want to go to the next level, here are some things that you could be doing. You could have a robust website content strategy, like a lot of different blogs, a lot of different information. You could do SEO in your area so that you can kind of come up on, when people are just searching for you organically. Then you have paid ads, meta ads. You could do email marketing and text message-based marketing. You could set up a lot of different drip campaigns and special funnels in your CRM. And then you could get very active on your social, particularly on Instagram. So that's like the next level.
And again, what we're trying to do here with these slides, a lot of times dentists will come to us and ask, what should I be doing? Again, the question is, what are you trying to accomplish? And then we can steer you on what you should be doing. But as a general framework, we want you to think about, these are things that are musts. If you're trying to be more competitive, these are things you could consider. It still depends a little bit on your exact marketing strategy. And then from there, if you want to even be more competitive, and I'll turn it back to you, Erica, you would consider kind of some of the things here on this list.
Yeah. So this is if you want to be really competitive, right? Having more of a custom website was really like not just like a template site, something that really, really, really showcases your brand. Custom photo and video shoots that really does well. For example, earlier in this talk, I gave examples of, the practice that I picked for myself and the practice I picked for my daughter, and both of them definitely had custom photo and video. You could do custom video ads, and you could sort of do additional different channels. Like you have TV ads, over the top streaming ads, you have YouTube, all sorts of different things, much more aggressive on SEO, more aggressive blogging. So if you're really trying to take things to like the very next level, or you're in a really competitive city and you really want to stand out, like these are all things that you can consider as well. And in terms of multi-location, right? Obviously, we have a lot of that in the DO. There's different ways to customize that approach, and once again, this depends on you and your practice and what you're trying to accomplish, right? I think it's really important to have a location subsite for every location. So something that shows up. Let's say you're in Los Angeles and you have practices all around. You can have something that shows up for Burbank, and one for Pasadena, and one for Beverly Hills. That really shows up for the person searching, because most people won't really travel super far for a dental practice, right? So that way they get what's closest to them. Having content built out for each of those locations and very specific ads and landing pages for that location, so they still feel special and like going to your location, that's for them, right? So there's a lot more you can do on that. It's kind of all listed here, but those are all things that you can do for multi-location practice.
Key takeaway for me on this one that I want to convey here, Erica, is customizing your strategy once you become multi-location is where I think it's where it becomes very important to be custom. If your marketing team is kind of just trying to apply the same blanket approach, I think that's where we really see the marketing fall down and frustration kind of build. Because as you go into multiple locations, again, the thought is, well, these all just need to be kind of painted with the same brush, and that's not true.
Right.
So we have developed marketing systems for multi-location that are really able to be dynamically adjusted for each practice, for each location. You've seen the strategy. A lot of people ask us, should I have multiple websites? Should I have a single website? Ultimately, single website, much more convenient. Multiple websites performs better. So there's kind of a push and pull there. We've developed a strategy with a single website for a multi-location where you can still get organic traffic or get SEO results at each location that works really well. There's a lot to say here about multi-location strategy that we don't have time for today, but the key thing is to realize that there are ways to tailor a strategy that weights everything you're doing towards the locations as is necessary for each location instead of just taking a blanket approach. And that's what's so important about your multi-location strategy.
Exactly.
And then here, Erica, I'm going to pass it back to you here because Erica is going to kind of, I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to talk a lot about strategy and then we'll get into the practical. We've talked a lot on strategy. I appreciate you listening through all of this. And Erica, why don't I give it back to you and you can take it away, kind of just giving some practical stuff.
Yeah, and we're going to kind of go through this somewhat rapidly, but Google Business Profile, let's just start right there. I would say that this is one of the most important aspects about your dental marketing, and I'll tell you why. You have different places when somebody Googles for dentist, and today, the main way people find a dental practice is through Google. Yes, there's Instagram. Yes, there's other ways, but it's often through a Google search is the number one way that patients find a dental practice to this day, right? And that includes AI. So you go to a page on Google, right? You might have that Google AI overview. Then underneath, you're going to have the map pack, right? You're going to have like 3 to 5 locations on that map, which is where your Google Business Profile lives. And then underneath, you're going to have your organic SEO. And somewhere in all of that, you also have paid Google ads. So there's like 4 different ways that you can interact with a person on page 1 of Google. And it's important, your Google Business Profile, because that map pack comes up pretty quickly. Also, the Google AI review pulls from that map pack as well, which I'll get into a little bit later. But it's really important to set up your Google Business Profile. And when I say set it up, I mean set it up. You don't just put your name and address on there. You need to put a ton of photos on there. You need to be having people ask questions. You need to be answering those questions. You need to be putting appointment times and details in there. You have a lot of different places that you could set up and fill in on your Google Business Profile. You could even have a section on all of your services. So it could be like, all in fours, it could be implants, it could be wisdom teeth, it could be anything on there, but you need to actually go through, and any place that you could put in information, you need to put in your information, right? And that is all part of setting up your Google business profile. So fill it out completely. You should be having dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of photos on your Google business profile. You should be adding new photos to it every week or every couple of weeks. And then your next step is to get a lot of different reviews, right? It's important. I noticed that the most successful dental practice have tons of reviews. For example, here's two very successful practices. One of them has over 200 reviews. The other one has over 1,000 reviews. Like that is sort of the level you need to be thinking of. At least well over 100 reviews for any dental practice is what I expect on Google. So you also have the opportunity to do local service ads, right? So those are the sponsored ads that show up in the map pack itself. And those are really worthwhile, especially if you have built up your Google business profile a bit with those reviews so that you could be seen much more easily and have sort of cast a broader net just in case that you're not geographically super close to that person. So those are all things that you should be doing that are around your Google business profile.
If you're not familiar with LSA ads, one unique aspect of them is that they are pay per lead. So a lot of times clients will ask us, is there a way we can just pay when we get a lead? And that is the only way you can do that with Google, or really any great way to acquire leads. This is the only one that I know of where you can pay per lead. And if you were going to only spend a limited amount of budget on your on patient acquisition on ads, that's probably where I would start.
I agree. Okay, paid ads. These are just a few things that we've observed, right? It might be a little different in every demographic. It might be a little bit different depending on your brand, but they're just things that we've noticed, okay? When you run a paid ad, it's good to have some sort of offer. Maybe it's for a first-time patient or some sort of discount. And we've noticed that for whatever reason, having a flat discount, like $500 off all on fours versus a percentage, like 10% off all on fours, works better. So that's just a little tip you should know for your paid ads and any sort of offers you do. In terms of the ad creative, this has been an interesting thing that we've kind of done a lot of different testing on. A few things that we've seen work really well is it's really important to have a lot of calls to action, meaning immediately on a landing page, the opportunity for somebody to reach out to your practice or to put in their email or request more information. If you try to put a bunch of information and then you bury that CTA, that's a problem. In terms of the creative, if you can show any forms of before and afters, if you are in cosmetic dentistry at all, or any form of smile restorations, Invisalign, things like that, they perform really well if there's plenty of them on a landing page. So in terms of landing pages, also just keep them simple. The other thing is that we find that videos work better for meta ads more so than still images. So if you can create a video where it's a patient experience, like somebody walking into your practice and sitting down with the dentist, and then at the end, maybe sharing a little testimonial. We've found that these patient experience videos where it has some sort of testimonial, plus it shows you as a dentist and your practice, those perform really, really well. In general, for meta ads, we really like to do it to bring a lot of eyes and sort of do brand recognition and sort of different campaigns around that to just generate a high volume of leads. But those videos are really needed because that's how they show your practice. So if you don't have any form of assets, let's say you don't really have any videos or any photos, the meta ads just aren't going to perform as well. In terms of budgeting, it's really important to budget based off of what you're going after. You cannot come into Beverly Hills and say, hey, I have $1,000 a month and I really want a bunch of high ticket cosmetic dentistry items. That's not going to work. You have to understand that budgeting is set by your competition, meaning it depends on how many people are bidding on the same spots you are. And that's true for both Meta and for Google because you're trying to get a certain amount of visibility there, right? So your budget has to be based off of what procedure that you are going after and what your competitors are doing. So when it comes to budget allocation, you really need to make sure that there's competitor research being done so that you pick the right procedures and what is within your budget so that it'll actually perform really well. So I would say that in budget allocation, that very first step is like a really, really, really thorough competitor analysis. And then once you have all this sorted out and you have your ads running, you need to have drip campaigns. People expect instant follow-up, especially in today's day and age. You cannot wait an hour to respond to somebody or let alone a day. So you need to have a full drip campaign set up, meaning automated text message that goes out, automated emails that go up, lead nurturing, different sequences that carry on afterwards. Even with that human interaction and somebody in your front desk or in your office doing follow-up as well, those automations need to be set in place so that they have an instant response and that they can reach out via text, call or from a web form. It cannot just be a call. It cannot just be a web form. Texting and having a chat on your website and having a chat on your ads is incredibly important. So you have to have campaigns set around that. So you're not spending all this money running some sort of ad, and then you're not doing the follow-up needed to convert that patient. So just a few other things on the website. Having a really good blogging strategy is very helpful, especially if there's anything specialized you do, right? I'm just going to go back to like my pediatric dentist example, right? Your keyword is pediatric dentist or maybe kids braces. There's not a lot of like big procedural keywords for your website, right? So the whole strategy around that on how to get more patients is blogging. Think of all of the questions that parents might have in terms of bringing their kid to a dentist. And once you've figured that out, you're probably going to find it's like 100 questions for various nervous parents out there. And you basically write blogs to answer all of them. And that applies to everything in dental, even general dentistry, even somebody getting an implant for the first time. Think about being in your practice, having a patient in front of you, asking you all these questions. Now, bottle up all those questions and make a crazy blogging strategy for about it. You'll get so many more patients that way. You'll be answering all their questions. You could then take that blog and you can make it into a monthly email newsletter. You can even send it out every couple weeks, and you could do a whole content strategy. You could then take that information and do social media posts that are relevant to it, so that you could have it all sort of be themed. And that is really important. It kind of starts with going like, what do people ask you? There's of course like different keyword research you can do and long tail keyword research, but you'll find that it often mirrors, what do patients ask you? And if you make sure that you have a lot of content to answer all those questions, you're going to get a lot more eyes on your site and on your social media.
All right, and then I think we are running a little bit low here on time today, but I do want to address the subject of AI in dental marketing because it's something we get asked probably every day. What should I be doing as it relates to taking advantage of AI with our marketing? And I think it's important to separate the hype from the reality. There's a lot of incredible stuff that AI is doing, and it is getting scary good, and it's only going to get better. There's no denying that. But I think it's still important to realize that we are in a hype phase. And when we talk about marketing, I kind of liken it to power steering versus self-driving. We aren't there yet. I think you'll see a lot of social media content saying you can just press a few buttons and your marketing is automatic. And I can tell you that's not true. It probably will become true. And that'll be awesome when you can just kind of type in your goals to some sort of an AI agent and it runs off and executes and you can kind of maybe oversee it a little bit. But think of it as like, it's power steering today. It's helping us to steer. It's providing a lot of tools. This image you're looking at right here for this presentation was created with AI. There are specific applications for which it is excellent: content writing, image generation, video editing. We use it for a lot of audio editing with podcasts, creating captions for your content, a lot of social media applications actually, and general asset creation. But we're just entering this era where it's going to do things through agents, which means on automatic, essentially. You ask it to do something, it's plugged into different applications that you use, and it's going to go off and do that. It's going to take a while. We're seeing the beginning of that. It can book you a reservation. It can order you some food. And I think it'll be a little while. I don't know how long, to be honest with you, before you can just kind of put it on cruise control. And even then, how much oversight do we need to have to make sure that it stays on the rails? We get asked quite a bit specifically about how do I show up in those chatbots in ChatGPT when someone types for a dentist. The reality right now is that AI SEO is about content. If you think about it, if you're asking an AI chatbot a question, it is going to go look on the internet for those things. If you don't have content that answers those questions or that somehow fills in what that person is looking for, you don't stand a chance of showing up. So that's your first thing, is just create a ton of content. Reviews matter. PR matters actually in this age where we've seen people put out press releases and get it picked up in a whole lot of different places. And the AI picked up on those signals and started recommending the person who put out those press releases. It's crawling sites like Reddit. ChatGPT specifically uses Reddit as a data partner. If you have more mentions on Reddit, you have a better chance of coming up. Erica has a great story of just adjusting a small thing with someone's Google business profile where they weren't coming up and their competitors were, and all of a sudden they started coming up just because they had all of that information on their Google business profile. So the more information that you can put out there, consistently accurate across a bunch of different platforms, the better your chances are. It's all about content right now. Even Instagram just recently announced that Google will start crawling their results and giving Instagram videos in their search results. So the content that you talk about in there, AI is going to see that stuff as well. And at the end of the day, what I will say about AI is I think your brand is going to matter more. And that's why I spent so much time at the beginning of this talk talking about brand philosophy. If you want to compete in this coming day and age, It's going to be very democratized. It's going to be easier for people to market. So you're going to need more things that break that tie, and your brand and your concept that you own is going to really matter the most. Again, I think we're very tight on time here, but what you want to look for in a marketing agency is someone that understands your marketing plan is a living and breathing thing, and they need to be able to be a good collaborative partner with you, adding content, updating offers, updating ad creative whenever necessary, and also giving you feedback and taking your feedback, giving you insights, taking your feedback, and you need to create a constant feedback loop that is collaborative. When you dial back your budget on your marketing, which is totally fine. If you have a goal that doesn't require a lot of marketing, you're in a market, doesn't require a lot of budget, your plan is relatively simple, fantastic. When you get into a more competitive market, one of the things that happens when you are looking to save on marketing budget is you cut out a lot of that collaboration stuff. But you need to understand when you cut that collaboration stuff out, you're working with an agency that's more or less going to put you on cruise control. And I'm not saying this to toot our own horn. I'm simply saying this because so many people say, why do I run into this problem with these marketing agencies? And it's the reality is that you need someone who you're actually looking to collaborate with. And that's the service they provide versus someone who's looking to just kind of put you into a templated box. Speaking of putting yourself into a box, I mentioned earlier that when you pick a concept, you might feel like, well, I'm boxing myself out of all the other services that I provide. That's not true. I have a lot to say about it. Unfortunately, I'm out of time here. You can get these slides and look this over, but the gist of it is you can include in your business plan many other services that you want to provide, and you need to have a deliberate plan as to how you're going to market and sell those things without diluting your main message. But the point is to have a hook. And you need to do that while being authentic to yourself and not simply saying we're this when we're really not that. But there is a way to have a key primary core messaging that you use in your marketing, which is going to really align everything about your marketing while still offering these other things and having them show up when people need them. They walk into the office, you're cross-selling, you're upselling, you're cross-promoting, you're doing all kinds of internal marketing strategies. And there's a lot of other things I could say about it. But all I will say is that picking something that you want to really hang your marketing on as a hook does not mean you have to give up on all the other services that you provide at all. And I think that's something that's lost in people is they have a hard time giving up on all of these things. And so then they kind of end up being that everything to everybody thing problem that I mentioned earlier. And to me, once again, when you do that, you become nothing to anyone, at least as it relates to your marketing. You're spending marketing dollars to get your message out there. You need it to be sharp. You need it to be focused. You need it to be targeted. So there's a way to do both. That's the key lesson here. So quick summary here. You want to start with a strong foundation. As Erica mentioned, when she went over the different marketing plans, there's the foundational basics, which are just table stakes. And you do need a marketing agency that knows how to do those, and they know them in and out. They know them cold. They're keeping up with what works on those platforms and what doesn't. And you need that foundation. But if you really want to start outperforming, which is what so many people are asking us, how do we outperform? You need a real growth plan. And what I've tried to provide here for you today is not so much an infomercial about working with us. I'm giving you actually quite a lot of homework, and I hope that you don't mind to look kind of inward and say, what can I do that's going to set myself apart, that's going to tell patients why I'm the no-brainer option for them, and it's going to give your marketing agency the groundwork they need to have a much more targeted approach for all of your marketing. You need to know that business plan. You need to own a concept in your market, or just have a thesis. Again, supply and demand. If that underlying supply and demand thesis is true in your market, then you're going to do great. If you're in a more competitive market, you might need to have a little bit more of a targeted attack plan and a concept that you can own. Know your goals and create a growth plan based on those goals, not based on, hey, this is what we do for everybody else and we're going to apply it to you. And focus on the channels that are going to forward your marketing plan and that are going to bring in the patients, importantly, that you want. And then, as I mentioned just a second ago here, you want to work with a collaborative partner who can actually make sure that you keep that plan on track. Thank you so much for your time today. Again, you can scan this QR code here or go to influxmarketing.com/DEO to get all of these slides. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us as well on our website, influxmarketing.com, and we would be happy to set up a call regardless of whatever you're doing with your marketing today, or if you're looking to make a change, doesn't matter. We'd be happy to just answer questions from this webinar or any other questions that you might have. So thank you again for watching, and we look forward to meeting you at a DEO event in the future.
Thanks for having us.